Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. So today, something a little bit different. You could argue that this is a video by popular demand. I've been asked by a number of people, not a huge number, but it's a recurring question that comes up that seems to have not been addressed by me and most other people, I don't think either. Regarding all these model kits that we are buying, some of them we're building, not enough in my case, and the question really is this: you get these fantastic kits, and let's just take me for a bad example. You spend a year or 2 years building them, oops, and then what the hell do you do with them? And you know, I've got the Brian Lane Qatari Spitfire out in front of me here, and the reason for that is it's a fairly big model, you know, 32nd scale. It's quite a decent size, and they obviously do take up quite a bit of room. And one of you recently said, just a couple of weeks ago, said it'd be great if you would do a video about what do you do with your models once they're built. So let's talk about that today. So what I'm going to do with this video, it's going to be one of my edited videos. There's a novelty for you. Because I've actually done a little bit of footage where I am going to be looking at my model cabinets. So we're going to talk about model cabinets, and I'm going to show you my two, and you can see some of my work in there, some of my better work in fairness, and some of my worse. You'll see both ends of the spectrum. I just want to apologise in advance that the lighting will be quite poor compared to what you're used to. It's just the nature of the way the camera interacts with the lighting. So one of the cabinets is in my hallway, and the other one is in our sort of dining strip living room area. So it won't be quite as well lit as what you are used to when you see me in front of the camera like you do at the moment. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a little while. Let's talk about displaying your models then. So we'll move Brian Lane because he's not been built yet, obviously, but I just wanted to, I thought he was an interesting one to start off with, because you will see in my cabinet I have got a 32nd scale Spitfire. It's the Tamiya Mark 9C. I've also got a Mustang and lots of other interesting stuff. Many of you will have seen them before, I'm sure, if you follow the channel closely, but those of you who are newer subscribers won't have seen any of this stuff, and I think you'll be quite impressed by some of the work you see, and probably have a good laugh at some of the older stuff which isn't so good. Anyway, we'll move Brian Lane out of the way, and let's talk about ways to display your models. So, ta-da! In the background I have here, I'm going to zoom you in, a couple of examples of different options for model display, and we have here, I'm going to move my Mosquito bits out of the way, and maybe talk about that at the end with a quick update. Not that much to talk about, but anyway. So we've got here a couple of nice examples. They just happen to be red. That's a coincidence, really. The fact that they're both red in colour, but just sort of put that to the back of your mind. What we have got a sports car, and we've got the red arrows from the 1970s with their Nat jet. So we'll talk about the Nat first. I think that's a good one to have a look at. So here we go. Now this is an interesting one, because this is something I've talked about a lot generally when I'm doing kit reviews. I keep complaining about stands. Now this one's got a stand. I don't know if you can see that okay. Is that alright? Yeah, there we go. So there's my red arrow. A very nice little kit actually from Airfix. Had one or two issues around the cockpit area which I never quite resolved, but anyway, it's pretty nice, and it's got a nice paint job, etc, etc. So it's got one of these A stands. Now I'm going to talk about these more in a little bit of depth now. Stands generally, I think, I get quite riled about this, and I'm not the only one. Some of the feedback from some of you feel the same way, many of you do. I'd say almost a majority. So what we have, most kits now don't come with any in-flight option, and it's frustrating, you know. Airfix do give you an option, but you've got to buy them separately, and I've got some here, so I'm going to show you an identical one to that. How it comes, and I'll give you a bit of history on this. These came out in the literally right at the end of the 50s, start of the 60s. They're 60 years old, you zoom in, and they are a bit. And when they came out, in fairness, I think they were quite good and did the job, but they used to be included in the kit. So why now Airfix Hornby think that we have to buy them separately is a mystery. Now, they're kind of crude. They're not posable or anything. They're just affixed, as you can see with the nap behind. It's just a fixed stand on a fairly average to I won't say poor, that's probably too harsh, but not a brilliant piece of clear part by today's standards. But it does the job. But I do resent, and I'm sure a lot of you feel the same way from the comments I've had, I think we resent that we have to buy that as an optional extra. Why? And it's not just Airfix, I'm not particularly picking on them here at all. Why do we have to go to all these manufacturers? The only one that's the exception is Tamiya, but even, I mean, they have got really good stands, but even they only do it in a handful of kits. So the 32nd scale ones, when you see mine in the display cabinets, they're actually on the wheels, but perhaps I should have put one up on one of those lovely Tamiya stands, which is, you know, you can angle them and all that business, but it's an in-flight option. Here is the smaller version that comes in the pack. I think, well, these are not cheap. I think it was about, I don't know, £7 or £8 at least to buy these, maybe £10. Just under £10 anyway, but they're very, very crude, you know, they don't do much. And of course, those of you that follow my channel and know that I am the great evangelist for the Matchbox range of kits that started back in 1972. They revolutionised this market because they produced a stand that was like in the shape of an M for Matchbox, and it had this like a ball and cup on the top, so you could angle your aircraft at whatever angle, banking or climbing or diving. And that really was a breakthrough, and that was included in the box. That came with every kit that was in the purple and the orange range and the red range as well, I think. Yeah, purple, orange and red. So all the three main ranges got a stand. Now, these days, you know, Airfix don't seem to think that anybody needs a stand. Now, they do on the beginners kits and the snap kits. I think they're doing these shadow stands, which are very, very good, but I just can't understand why we can't have an option like this. You know, why can't they include those stands in the main kit? Anything up to, you know, a medium-sized 72nd scale kit doesn't make sense to me, and it's very frustrating that we have to all conform to this, you know, sort of weight on wheels. The wheels are down, and that's it. No option for having things in flight. You know, and you've got a Jaguar or a Jaguar. We wish. Oh, that was a Freudian slip. Yeah, I keep mentioning the Jaguar because I keep beseeching Airfix to produce a new Jaguar in 48th preferably, or 72nd. It isn't forthcoming. I don't know why not. They seem to have come out with all sorts of things this year that nobody really asked for, but anyway, I'm not knocking Airfix. So let's talk about the others. You know, Revell don't give you stands, and we used to get them. You know, they used to do them in the days of yore. Frog used to do them, and they were really quite a good stand as well. They used to have single or twin stands, and they had a posable element to them as well, so they were quite well designed actually for a cheap model kit, you know, a pocket money kit. That's what we need really, but there should be an option to pose them in flight instead of having to faff around and cut holes out that were never intended. And this is the manufacturer's job to provide as many options as possible to increase the appeal of the product, and they're not doing it. Anyway, that's actually a slight exception. I've only got, I think, a couple that are on stands like this, apart from the Matchbox, which most of them are on stands, or certainly half of them. I've got the Phantoms on a stand. I think maybe one of the Spitfires, I can't remember now, it's on a stand, but it was so easy to do it, you know, it came with it. It was a good stand, and it was a nice way to display the model, so why would you not do that, you know? So that is one. You'll see this in the when I intersplice my show around of the cabinets. You'll see this one tucked away on the bottom shelf. But that's yeah, I'm quite happy with that. But I had to pay extra for it and faff around with it a bit extra, and I don't see why the manufacturer can't include those options in the kit. So many people, you know, aircraft, especially something like that. The gnat on the ground looks absolutely rubbish. It's probably the one I took one look at and thought, well, there's no way I'm posing that on the ground, because they've got these very short wheels and short legs, and it looks most awkward. That looks absolutely brilliant in the air, I think, in the flight pose, and it looks shocking on the ground. I don't think they look good at all. And it's not the only aircraft, you know. So yeah, so over to the manufacturers, you know. I mean, ICM don't do stands, Revell don't do stands, Airfix don't do stands unless you buy them separately. And you know, I mean, come on, this is literally 62 years old now. I mean, really, really? It's a long time since they would just retire that mould just what's been in, and they need to come up with something a bit more modern that gives you the ability to pose it. And I think that this is true of all these kit manufacturers. You know, the Far East manufacturers are not doing them either. It's just become the norm. That's another thing we don't have to do. It's a bit like my usual rant about instructions. We just don't do it. We're not going to give them any history. We're not going to tell them about the performance of the plane or the car or whatever it is, or the tank. You know, just the Chinese manufacturers especially. They just want to bang out some well-designed CAD plastic, and that's it, and then charge you the full price. In some cases, as I talked about recently, as if it was Tamiya, which it isn't. Tamiya will give you everything, and you know, you get those 32nd scale kits. Even the 48th scale, I know many of you are perhaps not the biggest fan of the F-35, but they recently came out with the F-35B, and that's got a stand as well. So, you know, they're coming out with stands on those, which is a really, really good thing, and that's all in the box. And people say, oh, Tamiya are expensive. Well, you know, the airfix are not cheap. You've got to go buy separate stands and all these extras that are not included. Pilot figures, you know, which they don't do in quite a lot of their products. Again, Tamiya's included in the box, but I'm kind of going over old ground with that, so we'll move on. So, stands for aircraft, yes, I think we need them. You can buy these from Airfix, as I say. How many you'll use. I do find the quality is quite poor in terms of scratching when I put them in a better bag than they were in. But they actually arrive in sort of average quality condition, you know. No great care goes into them, so they've really had their day. They've really had their day. It's time we had something new from Airfix. In particular, of all the manufacturers, you'd expect them to be doing it, I think. And I say, on the sort of small to medium-sized kits, especially in 72nd, I think that, you know, when they do it with these shadow stands, they are good, actually. So, you know, so they need to roll that out and make it standardised into the range of their popular kits that are 72nd and even maybe even the 48s as well. Anyway, that's one first thing out of the way. So that's aircraft. Now, cars. Obviously, I'm going to get into the cabinets later, but aircraft or cars, this is another option, isn't it? And having its own display case. Because the biggest enemy you've got with model kits, obviously, is dust, you know, and they pick up dust in just hours, frankly. Hours. And I've had them out there. I've actually got some, I've actually got a couple that are Formula 1 cars from the late 80s, early 90s. Senna's cars and Mansell and people like that, Berger. And there just isn't room for them. There just isn't enough room, and they've been out for a year or two, you know, on a shelf in a hall, which is, I won't show you, but it's got the better of them, and they're degrading and they're covered in dust. It doesn't do models any favours. You really need to put them in some sort of case or cabinet that protects it from the dust. So what we've got here, this is my Toyota GT86, which is actually a scale model. This is the Tamiya kit in 1/24th scale? 1/20th or 1/24th? Can't remember. Is it 1/20th? Can't quite remember. I think it's 24th. But this is a beautiful kit, actually. Another one of their absolute peach kits. Really goes together beautifully. Very accurate in most respects. And I think I did a fairly nice job of it, but I actually owned the car. I haven't put my own plate on it, but I owned a car that's absolutely identical to the one you see. And I thought, well, I've got to have that. In fact, my wife bought it as a birthday present for me, and I think I did a decent job of it. It's got the interior all accurate. It's even got the green goo. You can't probably see this, but if I zoom in a little bit more, just turn it around. It's got this strange, in the engine compartment, there's some like greeny stuff on top of some of the metallic components. We call the green goo, and it's a rust inhibitor that they get sprayed with at the Subaru factory, because these are made by Subaru at the Fuji Heavy Industries Subaru factory. Even though they are Toyota branded, both cars are produced by Subaru in actual fact, using obviously design and parts from Toyota as well. But it was, you know, I did a little bit of extra there. That wasn't in the kit, you know. But you can see things like the badge. It's beautiful, you know. And that needs to be protected. So again, you've seen my 12-scale motorbike, the Tamiya one, which you'll see in the cabinet later. But they need a little bit of care, and they need a bit of love, and they need protection. These things, especially when you do a nice job of it. And I think I did. Yeah, I think I did a fair job of it. Paint finish is 8.5, 9 out of 10. I think it's one of One of my early sort of paint finishes I did with, I think I did it with rattle can actually, but anyway. But this is, moving on to the sort of protection, this is actually a case. I actually bought this an unusual one because it's actually handmade, and I bought it. I was actually at the Crewe South Cheshire Militaire Model Show many years ago. This was about, I don't know, 1994 or something. And I actually bought, there was a model of an Opel Calibra racing DTM racing car in white and yellow, and I was so taken with it. I made this chap an offer and I bought it off him, including the case. So you won't actually be able to buy this particular one over the counter, but others are available. Now Trumpeter do cases which are good for aircraft as well. They do some that are quite big, about double the size of this. Maybe slightly more than double, just over 2 times the size, I'd say, square, and they do sort of an oblong one for cars. So if you are, you know, if you haven't got the luxury of a cabinet like I've got, I would recommend these. Now what you do with things like ships, which are quite awkward, and I think it's the reason I've strayed away from them, is that they look great on a window ledge, but you need quite a decent sized cabinet depending on what scale and what ship, obviously. I suppose the one good thing is you can probably get quite a lot of ships in a cabinet because you can have them side by side, but each market sort of develops their own specialties. But I always go to Telford at the Scale Model World, the Nationals, in November, which I'll be going to this year, by the way. And I always have a good look, and it's the one thing I always think is a bit of a letdown. I never quite see the cases and display cases. I never see ones that I really want to buy. I'm not knocking anybody out. I can only recall actually one stand that had them, and I don't think last year they had any. Not the ones I was looking for, not the sort of size I was looking for. Because the thing is, again, if you've got a 32nd scale Spitfire or the Mosquito, which I'm working on slowly, that's going to be quite big. You need a big case for that. A big case. Now I think, fingers crossed, I think I can get it in my cabinet, which is what the story I've told before. It's one of the reasons I held off building the Mosquito for so long. Really was the fact that I thought it was too big for the cabinet. So I left it for, well, it's actually 10 years since that kit came out, 10 years in November. And I got it a year later, so I've had it for 9 years. But I did look. I was looking initially, trying to find a big enough display case for it. I couldn't find one really. So again, perhaps if any of you know, companies that do them bespoke or to order or whatever, it'd be interesting to know where you guys get your cabinets cases from. So I'm sure many of you have done this and have got some nice ones. Please share in the comments where you bought your cases from or recommended companies, because it's great for us all to know that. As I say, this is a bit of an exception because this one is, and I actually sold on the Calibra kit. Somebody wanted it out of Calibra, I think, and I sold it on, but I kept the case. And I've never regretted that decision because it keeps my Toyota GT86 absolutely like new. Anyway, I think without further ado, we should probably move on and have a look at my cabinets. Now, I have to say to you, we've started off talking about stands, then we talked about cases. Now we're going right to the top of the food chain in terms of price, cost, And you're going to be paying, depending on what sort of cabinet you want. If you want a cabinet with illumination and multiple layers and top lighting and side lighting, you're going to be paying £1,000 and more, as you'll see. But you can still get, display cabinets that are smaller. It just depends what you want and what you want to display, really. I mean, if you are a 72nd scale modeler, you're going to have less of an issue than those of us that go a bit bigger. I've got obviously racing cars in 12 scale and a motorbike as well. I've got 20th scale cars, 24 scale cars, 35th scale armour, which is very common, of course. These can all be found spaces, but eventually you start running out of space, and that's the issue that I've had. And as I'll talk about, there's one or two kits where you look at them now and you think, yeah, you did that a long time ago, and it's not up to the standard I want to display anymore, really. It's probably one of them is the Revell not Revell's fault. The Revell English Electric Lightning, and I'm going to move that on because I didn't paint it, and it was okay for a while, but it's kind of had its day. I think it needs to go to the charity shop. I made it nicely, and I painted the detail parts, but I didn't. I left the. It has this like a natural grey silver plastic, which it's got the plastic floors in it, so it doesn't really look realistic. It's nicely made, nice kit. Not a bad model actually, but just from an earlier time, shall we say. And it also in my Buccaneer, which is actually quite nicely built as well. Not one of my finest though. That was built well over 10, 12 plus years ago. Not my finest work. So I'm trying to be more. I don't. And this is another question that people have asked me, and perhaps we can share our sort of collective experiences. What do you do when you run out of space? What do you just let the oldest one go, or do you give them to people? Do you sell them off charity or whatever? I wonder if I might actually do that. I might sell some of mine off for charity, and maybe for Ukraine charities or something like that. I don't know. Trouble is, I'm not sure anybody would buy them, because as I say, it's not like buying one of my latest. If that's something that some of the better ones that you'll see, they'd probably fetch a decent price. So I may just give them to the charity shop. It may just be easier. I did that once before with the old 48 scale Jaguar, the old Airfix Hella one, which needs updating Airfix. I keep telling you, update the Jaguar for goodness sake. Anyway, you'll see I've got these little odd spaces, and there's one or two that you can see, well, that's not quite up to the standard. It's going to be moved along. So I think you have to do that really. Otherwise, you run out of space and you have to stop building. I would like another cabinet. I've got an idea where I would put it. There's probably room for one more. I've got two, these big cabinets, and I think I've got room for just one more left. So the only thing holding me back is the cost really, and it's well over £1,300 the one I want. I think it's more like £1,500 now in fact. And you have to wait quite a long time. They come from the Far East, these cabinets, most of them, and they're not cheap, and they take a long lead time, 4 to 6 months, Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to have a little break here, and we'll go and have a look at the actual cabinets themselves, and we'll see what you think. And we'll do the first one, which is in the living room. I'll also show you there my Saturn V rocket, which won't fit in any cabinet. And there's another one of those classic models that's a bit of a challenge, a bit of a nuisance in some respects, because it's not easy to find a place for it. So I found somewhere that works for me, but if it was anywhere else, it would definitely be in the way or be very vulnerable to being knocked and damaged. And again, you'll also see in our hall cabinet some big aircraft that have had to go on top because there's not really enough room in the cabinet. They would fit in, but it would just dominate it. And I did have it in the cabinet. It was Concorde in the past, but it has it just takes up too much space, and there's so many others that can be in there. But it might give you some ideas anyway about how to display your models. And I say the lighting isn't at its best. You'll see these models, some of them are slightly in shadow because it's more to do with the camera angle and the lighting than the way it looks to the naked eye. To the naked eye, it all looks great in the cabinet, but it doesn't always come out well on camera. So I just give you a warning before we go there. It will the images will be a lot darker, and I'll be in the shadows, like the Phantom of the Opera. Anyway, have a look see what you think, and I'll wind it up later on and just give you a quick update on the Mosquito, how it's going or not going, and then we will talk. We will have a little talk at the end about what's coming up in the near future, and I'll see you in a minute. So over to my twin brother demonstrating the cabinets in the dark. Anyway, not quite in the dark, but anyway, here we go. See what you think. Okay, hi folks. So, as promised then, here we've got a fairly, I was going to say typical, it's probably not typical actually. It's a display case, which I bought. It's the most recent one actually, the newest one we've got. Now this has got sliding doors, which makes it a little bit tricky for access sometimes, especially with the bigger models, I've got to be honest. So I mean, I've got the Vulcan in there. By the way, excuse me, dust, you see. You will see dust. It's that time of the year when I'm almost due for my annual dusting. Is it snowing? Remember that we did a YouTube short about that anyway. But it's quite an expensive bit of kit, this one, and I'm a bit nervous about sort of naming who I bought it from, for one reason, for two reasons really. One is that when it was delivered, I like the design, but when it was delivered, because obviously this has got, sorry I should explain, this has got, you'll see more in a second when I'll take the camera off and show you with some close-ups so you can see exactly what we're dealing with. So you can see straight away here in front of me I've got the Sea Harrier, Sharky Ward, we've got the Falklands that's a bit in the middle with the Sea Wolf missile firing off, and we've got the Sea Dart as well. Far side we've got some of our bigger ones, the 32nd scale Spitfire from Tamiya, Mark 9C. Over here we've got the Mustang P51D also from Tamiya. And then we've got these lovely racing cars, we've got the motorbike, and we've got the Le Mans Porsche there. And at the bottom, as you'll see, I'll show you a bit better when I sort of zoom in a bit closer. We've got the Vulcan there. The bigger models, it's a bit tricky because the sliding door doesn't really help it. On the other one I'll show you afterwards, you've got these opening doors, so it's very good for access. You open both doors wide like that, and you've got this big access, unencumbered access. Here you've got a little bit trickier, so you've got to manoeuvre it round. I mentioned about the company. I'm probably not going to don't think I'll go down the road of giving you their name, but I did have a couple of issues with them, and one of the issues was, well, first three issues: the price, the lead time, and quality. We had a scratch basically on this shelf, which is the reason that's been chosen for having the little diorama bases on from Coastal Kits. Because it's not a bad scratch, in fairness, it's not a bad scratch, but to me, I can see it, I know it's there and it annoys me. And it was actually done, I think it was done during the installation, which took about an hour, because they are very delicate things, these. You've got to do them very carefully. They come with a lot of packaging. Now, the other issue is the price. It was £1,350, I think I paid for it. So they're not cheap, these things, and they come from the Far East. The lead time, I think, was something like 4 to 5 months, which is not, I think it's probably worse now. This is not untypical, so just be aware that they're not readily available. I mean, this is basically a true exhibition standard, they call it, exhibition standard display cabinet, which is why it's so expensive, and they are very, very pricey, you know. I do like this one, and I'll show you when I take the camera off the tripod. It has got 6 lights instead of 4 at the top, so it's much brighter in here. The other one's a little bit darker, and I think you'll see that difference. But yeah, they're very good. You know, I mean, it's just a cost. You know, that's a huge chunk of change. Is £1,300. So basically, I've got 2 cabinets that's worth, yeah, £2,500 of the cabinet. Well, more than that, maybe £2,600 of the cabinet. It's a lot of money. You know, that's a big chunk of change, isn't it? That's like a couple of lost arcs with wing-up wings in it. So, horses for courses, and of course you always get models you see in the far background, the corner there. We've got the Saturn V, the Revel, it's the Revel 196 scale, 196 scale, isn't it? Which is the big one, not their finest product, but it's big, and that won't go in a cabinet unless you've got a particular very small, you know, size, and very tall, obviously, cabinet, so that's unusual. So there I am having to suffer the dust problems that we all have, of course, when you've got something out and about. So that needs quite a lot of care and attention. It's put there because it's safely out of the way, you know, the wife's not going to bump into it, the cat's not going to jump on it, and all that kind of thing. It's kind of tucked away in the corner. And it gets illuminated as well. It gets the bonus of being illuminated by the cabinet when it's on. So it's not a bad place for something that's awkward like that. So I'll zoom in a little bit, rather than just looking at me, and you can certainly see these main 2. Let's move out of the way there so I don't distract him. The main 2 levels, which have got the sort of Falklands diorama, if you like, and then we've got Charlie Fox's Spitfire from Normandy on the left, and we've got the red tail Mustang on the right, and then underneath you've got Ayrton Senna's McLaren Honda from 1991, complete with Ron Dennis. Don't know if you can see Ron there, just at the bottom of the picture. Standing in front of the McLaren. Then we've got right underneath, appropriately underneath Ron is Niki Lauda's Brabham fan car. You can just about make it out there now, which is famous because it only competed in one race and won it, making it the most successful Formula 1 car of all time, literally. So it won every race it competed in, just one. Then in the middle we've got Steve McQueen's Porsche 917K from the Le Mans movie. At the back we've got the Isle of Man TT. See if we can see him in a little bit for that. Isle of Man TT winning Honda RC166. Probably my best model in terms of quality, if I'm honest. And then over on the left side we've got, in the foreground, we've got the Lotus 79 of Mario Andretti, which actually won the title the year of the fan car. But for Lotus, of course. And in the left side we've got Nigel Mansell's 1990 Ferrari F190. 640 I should say, shouldn't I? 640, 641. 641? It's still 640 then. 641. 64B spec. Anyway, the 1990 spec, the V12 engine. And then at the top, if I zoom back out again, you've got some of the armour that you've seen anyway, I think. And so what I'll do now, I'll just zoom you in and come around the back of the camera and just talk you, try to perhaps cut my voice a bit for this. And here we go. So I'll come in a little bit closer. You can see, you'll see a lot of dust because I say it's that time of the year. Is it snowing time of the year? Time for the annual dusting again. And this is a slight downside with these cabinets because if you look very carefully, you can see that there is a gap. There's a gap there at the end. There's an air gap. See it? There it is. And this is where the dust gets in. So they're not airtight, which is I think the idea is it's got to let the heat out from the lights. You can see here they are actually LEDs. Here's the 6 I talked about. So there is still some warmth generated by all these bulbs, and you've got the lower. Every rank below there has got just 2 bulbs, one at each end, like so. Anyway, you can see my collection there. Charlie Fox's Spitfire. Back a bit too far. Just go over and have a look at the Apollo 11, Saturn V, which I think I showed recently at the anniversary back in July. And I say that's a fairly handy place for it to be kept. We've got Sharky Ward and his Sea Harrier. Poor old Sharky passed away this year, of course. And then we've got the Mustang. Sorry, I didn't explain. We've got obviously the Panther, the Tiger, and the King Tiger, and lots of Wehrmacht stroke Nazis, unfortunately, up here. And over here we've got the British Army with their patrol, and they've got Prince Harry, what looks suspiciously like Prince Harry, in his Sherman Fireflies, T-34 in the background, and an American Jeep up front here. And moving down, and then we're on the racing cars, as I mentioned. The Ferrari, just talked you through those really. Ferrari from 1990, Mario Andretti's Lotus 79, which is a very nice one. We've got the Le Mans Porsche here. There we go, from the Le Mans movie. Down at the back, probably my finest work, which is the motorbike, with that incredible working chain and super detailed genuine metal spoked wheels. Everything's metal, clutch, suspension. Absolutely incredible kit that was. Quite remarkable. And then we have Ayrton Senna and there's Ron Dennis. Senna's not, I haven't got the Senna figure, but I have got Ron Dennis. You can see him there. He's about to direct Senna out. So he should be giving thumbs up, thumbs out the other way really. Telling him to go off on a qualifying lap, I think. And that's the Tamiya kit, of course. And then we've got the Fujimi Brabham fan car that I mentioned, complete with its dustbin lid to cover up its infamous fan. So there we go. Anyway, moving down, we've got this is one of the bigger ones I talked about. We've got the Vulcan, and perhaps not so high quality, but very important to me, this Strike Master, the Matchbox Strike Master, which was built by my dad, and he built that a few weeks before he died, in fact. So has a bit of an emotional attachment. Then at the back we've got the ICM MiG-25 Foxbat, complete with its Soviet type apron that it's sitting on. And then of course we've got the huge TSR-2. Again, a bit tricky getting in and out of this cabinet, as I mentioned, with its sliding doors. It's not the best access. So if you think about getting one of these cabinets, I mean, underneath you've got these like cupboards, two cupboards. You can put a lot of kits in there, and I do. In the other one, it has got kits in it. I should have shown you that really, but it's got most of my wingnut wings are kept at the bottom of it. So it gives you a bit of an idea of what it's like in terms of what these cabinets, how they operate. You know, they have a single. It works on a single plug. I'll show you at the back here. There's the plug, power point. So it's just a single plug to power all that. Quite a lot of lighting, and it's. I mean, this is in our living room, and this actually does provide. One of the reasons that my wife let me do this and have it in the living room was the fact that it actually illuminates the room beautifully. It really lights up the darker end of our house living room. So actually, it's not a bad thing, to be honest. So there we have it. Grab my remote control, just reappear for you. Hello there. So there you go. So this is, I say it slides. There's a locking. It has a locking slider there. I think it's actually undone at the moment. Is it? Oh no, it is actually. It's actually locked, which is good in a way. So it's quite handy to actually. At least when it slides, it doesn't take up any room, excess room, by having doors that swing out. So that's quite useful. And they are very good, you know, they're just very expensive, and you've got to make sure that they're not going to be in a position where they're going to get damaged or crashed into by animals or pets, you know, pets and children, things like that. But they're not cheap items, they're not cheap items. So that's kind of the ultimate way of displaying your models, I'd say. I would like a third one of these, got two of them. I'd like a third one, but I'm just a bit nervous because they're so expensive and there's this lead time. And also, I mentioned there was a scratch, had a quality issue. I actually got a refund of £100, but I really wanted the shelf replacing, and they actually said we'll replace it as well, but they never did. And then they just stopped. I don't know if there's a communication breakdown, but they stopped answering my emails. So I'm not going to tell you who this company is. If you want me to privately, I will, but probably best that I don't publicly slander them. Well, it's not slander, it's fact. But there we go. So I was a bit disappointed with this particular manufacturer. Now there's lots of people who are actually acting as agents for these products. I think it was made in Malaysia, memory serves, and they are very serviceable. But you know, I don't know, £1,350 seems a lot of money for what they are. I mean, they're basically veneer. You know, they're only veneer over chipboard at the end of the day, and a frame with some glass. So, but they do look very effective. You know, and if you've got some nice models, mine are not the greatest here, perhaps, but some of them are, not so much the bottom row, but I think the race car and racing bike and some of these others are pretty good, you know. I think you've really got to put your best models in there. But, you know, it's not it makes the hobby very expensive if you start buying things like this. The choice is yours, the choice is yours. Anyway, I'll call it a day on this one, and we'll move on to the slightly cheaper one, which has got the alternative design of doors. So we'll move on and have a look. It's in our hall actually, so I'll move on. Show you that one next. And it's also got some of the bigger stuff sitting on top of it. So let's move on and have a look at that one. Or just another idea, you could do it like this. You could have more of an old school cabinet. It's actually very similar design, but just opens differently. This one actually opens. Show it. This is a door. It's not a sliding door. It's a hinged door. Still suffers from some of the same problems as the other one does in terms of to stop the build-up of heat. Although I've got LED lights, it does reduce it. LED bulbs now. There is this gap, which kind of like the dust in, and if I zoom it in, you'll probably see there's quite a lot of dust collecting anyway. But this is a similar sort of price. I mean, I actually paid a bit less. I think this was about £1,100 when I bought it, and that's it's got to be 15 years ago actually. 2009, maybe 2010, 2009 I think. Now here we've got quite a lot of my smaller, sort of medium to smaller sort of models. we've got the 48 scale, zoom in a bit, 48 scale, if you look there in the foreground there, all the Luftwaffe airmen that are at the sort of attending to the Focke-Wulf and the ME-109, the G6 from Tamiya, BF-109 G6. Then at 32nd scale, bigger, no figures, we've got the ME-163 Comet, and then we've got, I think 72nd scale, we've got the V2 rocket along with the V1 rocket next to it, and the ME-262 Schwalbe or Swallow in the background. And we've got the 48 scale one from Tamiya, the bigger one here. I don't know if you can make that out or not. Just about make it out, can't you? So, yes, quite a setup. I've got my little Matchbox set. I don't know if any of you spotted that, with all the little Matchbox armour kits at the top here. I'll zoom in a second, you can see them properly. And then on the very top, I'll zoom back again, on the very top here, above, we've got rather old school, sitting out in the dust, we've got Concorde, and we've got the Blackbird from Academy, I think it was, that one. And then that's the Airfix Concorde in 72nd scale. So it's quite big, and it will go in the cabinet but it just takes up an entire shelf, and it's hard to justify it really. It's not my finest work. I've talked about that one before. I like it actually. I think it's got some major shortcomings in the way they designed it, several silly things, but the shape is good. It's really looks like Concorde. It looks very like Concorde. It's big. Everybody seems to admire it when they come in the house, sees it. But anyway, this is another, typical cabinet. So we've got the 4 tiltable light beams at the top, which can be angled. I say I've really had to go. When you're on this top shelf, it's very critical because you've got these light beams. If you haven't got LEDs, you're into trouble because the heat build-up is staggering, and it just melts off the decals after about, I don't know, a year. You just don't see them lifting off, Even when you've got clear coats on the top, it starts cracking the clear coat and everything. Terrible. Too much heat. Like being in the Sahara. So we haven't really got that problem now because I've replaced everything with LEDs and we don't get the same heat build-up. You'll see better in a minute when I zoom in. I've got the Battle of Britain row at the back there in 48 scale. All Tamiya, I think. Tamiya, Italy. Oof, that's absolutely cool. So then zooming back, you can see here we've got the Tamiya Mosquito. Again, I'll zoom in closer in a second. Tamiya Mosquito with the Austin truck. We've got the Lakenheath F-15E Strike Eagle at the back. At the front we've got the Israeli Mirage 3 from the Six-Day War in 1967. And we've got the Tamiya Thunderbolt. And then lower down, which I'll show you, so I can't zoom you back until I get it in my hand, the camera. You'll see in a second that we've also got a shelf that's a bit emptier than the rest because I'm trying to create some space, and this is the problem you have. I mean, these are expensive, aren't they? I mean, £1,100 to £1,400 is a lot of money for a cabinet for models, Wow, that's a lot of kits, isn't it? That could be, I don't know, 6 wing nut wings. Yeah, something seems good value, but anyway, you can see what I mean. It's you've got to really maximise what you're putting in there. And the question that people sometimes ask, of course, is what do you? This is another question I've been asked. What do you do? When you've had your models for a long time? Well, you're going to see 1 or 2 models that are not my finest work, and at least 1 or 2 of them may be getting moved on. And sometimes I just give them to the charity shop especially if they're not my finest work, as I say. If I'm not especially attached to them emotionally and I think it's had its day. I mean, we've got, I'll show you in a second, we've got the Revell Lightning, which I didn't paint. That's kind of had its day now, really. That's probably going to get moved on to create some space for something else. But I would never, I could sell them, I suppose, but I think if they were really good ones, yes, I think people would buy them. That's something you could try. Some of this, really upmarket stuff here, yes, you could sell those on eBay, perhaps. I think even the Matchbox, especially if people knew that I'd built them. Actually, there's nothing special in terms of quality of kits, because some of them I've done traditionally, as I've said before, where I've not painted them. Some of them, things like the tyres are painted, but I've tried to do it, not all of them, but some of the Matchboxes I've done in the old style, like I did when I had them the first time round in the 70s. So, whether they'd be saleable, I'm not sure, but I say 1 or 2 of them are better than others. So we've got the Chaffee Puma are very nicely done, and the T34 in fairness, and actually and the M16 half track. Then the others maybe not so fantastic really, things like the Comet and the Sherman, and didn't put quite as much effort into those perhaps. But that's another option. But the beauty of these is they're so small you can always find space for them. It's the bigger models, the big ones are the problems. The 32nd scale kits, like the Mosquito, and I mentioned about the space, which I'll show you. So what I'll do now, I'll come behind the camera and let you have a little look at this and see what you think of it. Can you bear me just a second? We'll go in a little bit closer. Undo everything. Here we go. Now then, let's have a little looky. So, again, as I say, some of these, like the Concorde, it's not my finest work, but it's a Concorde and it looks okay. And then we've got the Blackbird, the Academy Blackbird. And this is the old problem, of course. They get absolutely mullered. They get covered in dust up there, which is why you really need the cabinet. So in the cabinets we've got, as I say, we've got our Matchbox collections here. I've got the T34. You'll have to forgive the lighting. It's perhaps not the best way to. A lot of you will have seen these already anyway, but this is not necessarily the most perfect lighting for these kits. You've got the Humber, the M16 half track. Obviously that's the Puma. I don't think that lighting is doing that Puma any favours at all. Actually, there we go. Get an idea, don't you? Better idea. There's the Jagd Panther, Comet. This is the one that's got no street, the Hanomag half track. Then we've got the bridge at Remagen Chaffee, which I quite like actually. I've got a Stug, I've got a Tiger, and we've got the old Sherman Firefly on the bridge there. And as I say, not my finest sort of paint jobs. But at the back we've got some sort of slightly better quality work. We've got nice Spitfire 48 from Tamiya. This is both of these are the 1994 version. And then we've got the Italeri stroke Tamiya, it's Italeri really. Italeri tooling of the Hurricane, which I wasn't that impressed by, and then the very latest of their Spitfires, which also had some issues, but very good nonetheless. Come back a bit, here we go, here's the airfield scene with all the ICM figures, 48 scale, and yeah, you can see the pilots getting ready, you've got the officers there, FW190. I think that's the A4, isn't it, from Tamiya. Then we've got our 32nd scale Comet, V2, V1, ME262. Let's just come in a bit, there we go. And the one that's been towed by the Kettenkrad. And down here we've got our Thunderbolt and Typhoon, our F-15. Move over a bit for you. Got the F-15 there, and the Mirage 3. Mirage 3 is the Edward 1, had a bit of a battle with that. And of course the Tamiya Mosquito. And then beneath that we've got the one I had a bit of a struggle with was the Edward 0. I wasn't entirely happy with that. But it looks very nice now. Probably better, better light on it. Perhaps better on this side. Let's have a look. There you go. How's that? It's better, isn't it? There we go. And then this is the shelf I mentioned that's got a bit more open, a bit more space. The rest are not kits, by the way. The one in the middle is. This is my oldest model of all. From 1982 it was built. My Porsche 928S. So I was quite proud of it. It's got an electric motor in it as well, so it runs around on the carpet if you let it. And then finally, just the bottom shelf. I mentioned one or two of these, perhaps not the finest work ever. That's okay. Buccaneer's going to get replaced by the FX1, so that's days are numbered. As are the Lightning, which is the one I mentioned. As you can see, it's not been painted. Just went with the sort of metal effect plastic. And the Beaufighter, that's quite nice. FX Beaufighter and some of these Matchbox Tempest. And the FX 76 Spitfire. And the Matchbox Hurricane. Hasegawa Harrier. And then last but not least, we've got the rather overly glossy, it has to be said, the Matchbox Phantom. And the reason it was overly glossy is I was experimenting with the high gloss finishes, getting ready for my Porsche 917, so it really needs a little bit of satin coat to matte it down a bit. It looks a bit silly. Anyway, there we go. So, it gives you a bit of an idea I'll pop you back on the stand, just bear with me a second. And there we have it. Oops. There we go. Super. Just turn you around a bit. There we go. So there we go. So yes, I thought I'd give you a quick look around. Hope that was interesting. Back to the studio, as they say. Cheers. Bye for now. Well, I hope you thought that was interesting. Having a look at those, and yeah, I mean, those are like professional display cabinets, and they are obviously not cheap. I think they're actually too expensive for what they are. They feel overpriced to me. And as I explained, there's been 1 or 2 issues with quality on them as well. Nothing major, nothing major. But make sure you get ones with LEDs that are not going to heat up the models, because that was a big issue with the first cabinet. The second one, as you saw them, it used to have standard halogen bulbs, and they just started to. You couldn't leave it on for more than a couple of minutes because it started heating up the models and heating up the finishes on them. You know, the paint finish would heat up and cause a lot of cracking problems with the decals, things like that. So yeah, that's quite sort of a professional approach to displaying them. I see a lot of you other modelers that don't go down that route, and I don't blame them because it's such a lot of money, you know. But don't go down the route of having them electrically illuminated. So actually, if you've got a reasonably decent room in terms of lighting, or you've got a hallway, or just a good, well lit area to display your models in, that's got natural lighting, or just domestic home lighting, that would save you a lot of money to just have standard sort of cabinets with zero illumination, no electrics. That might be the more sensible way to do it when cost is an issue. But I just wanted to, especially with the more recent one, so that was the first cabinet you saw that's in the living room. We decided to drop that in, as I said, because we wanted to just illuminate the room better anyway, and it was quite a dark part of the house. And when that's on, it really makes it very pleasant. It gives a lovely glow to the room, and it shows off my finest work. You know, it can't be bad, can't be bad. Anyway, at least some of you, those of you keep saying, "Oh, do you ever build any models? Do you?" Well, now you know the answer, don't you? I don't know how many there are there, but there's got to be, if you include all the figures, there's got to be, I don't know, there must be over 100 different items, well over 100. Anyway, there we go. So that's displaying for you what different ways you can go about the, what next? You build the model, then what? I know that some people, especially with the bigger models, will hang them. Well, some of you may be aware that I've actually got these. You'll see in my radio control video. Around me, I've got my radio control aircraft hanging, but they still gather dust really quite quickly. It's not something I'd recommend. You've got to be like a museum curator. Keep on top of it, because they will get messed up real quick, And I think that, especially if you've done a really nice job of it, and you've maxed out on an expensive model, and you're a skillful model builder, it's kind of then ruins them really if you let the sort of natural conditions get the better of them with age and time and dust. And dust is a nightmare to get off. Once it gets a hold of it, it tends to get itself into the surface, and they're never quite the same. So this is why I have them in the cabinet. I mean, there is still dust in the cabinets, and I do my job. Many of you will have seen the videos I've done the last couple of years where the week before Christmas I get them out, and it's such a big job. You'll appreciate now what a big job it is when you see just how many of those little figures there are at 48 scale and smaller, 76 scale. And you've got to get them all out, but then you've got to put them back, and it's so hard, I should say, it's so hard to get them back in without interfering or knocking the others over, and they're always falling over. And you're racing against time because you want to shut those doors as soon as possible to stop the dust building up already. And you've got to do it when there's no traffic. I mean, we've got it in the halls, probably the worst place in that respect. So it's a heavy traffic area. It's not easy. It's not easy. You still have to keep on top of it because mine are not sealed. So I suppose the answer really is a sealed case. Then you don't have any of that maintenance to worry about at all. I've got my Toyota GT86 there and it's got no dust on it whatsoever. Nor will it get any. It's completely sort of almost air sealed in there. So yeah, that's probably the most preferable solution of the lot, if I'm honest. Anyway, there we go. So that's cabinets and displaying your models, whether it's on a stand or in a case or in a cabinet. Now, finally, I thought I'd just give you a quick update on the Mosquito build. I've had other things in the way, but I have started to paint these figures, and this is quite critical because I need to get the figures done before I can complete the cockpit, because I've got to get. I'll just zoom you in a bit here. This is all a bit. Oops, this is all a little bit sort of, everything's sort of non-assembled. I've got all sorts of bits that are ready and they can't be brought together yet because we need to get these figures sorted first, really. You won't see a huge amount of difference now, apart from the sort of texturing of the seat, which I've done there. And I've got very similar texture on the other one, which is, that's the main cockpit area. Just 1 second. Bear with me. Then we've got the G, which is the little G navigation system. I think some of you have seen this already, perhaps. Which actually has come out, yeah, pretty well. I'm fairly happy with that, I've got to say. So that's got to go in, and then we've got the. This is the seat for seat for the navigator for Alan Broadley. You see I've done a bit of effects there, like leather effects. Try and show it a little bit worn at the front of the squab of the seat. So it's coming along slowly, you know, I'm getting there. That's actually glued in there now, so I've actually made some progress. Not very fast progress, it has to be said. A bit slow, too slow. So you say I'm taking too long, I would fully accept that. And then here we've got these doing these faces. This one has got a lot of us, including me, a bit worried because it looks like somebody quite well known, a world leader whose name will remain unsaid for various obvious reasons. It certainly looks like him to me. And then we've got the other two. Again, we're just in the early stage. They've already had the faces are not finished. Not obviously. They've got no eyes and things, and lots of work still to do. But they've had 2 coats, and I've actually changed the paints I was going with. I was going with this flash paint set from zoom you back. This flash paint set. I went with this, but I didn't really like the way it went down. It's quite. It's an acrylic set, but yeah, I wasn't that taken with them. I found them a bit. I think these might be better for. I'm brush painting, and these didn't brush paint very well in my experience. They just didn't go the way I was expecting. Nice colours, but something about the consistency of them. They were a bit clumpy and a bit blotchy and a bit strange. So I was recommended these actually by. It was actually by Matt Ball from the Flory Model Forum, Phil Flory's channel, and he recommended these AK acrylics. There's light flesh, base flesh, shadow flesh, and then highlight flesh. I've got 4 of them, and to be honest, they are going down very nicely, and they're flowing a lot better. They also seem to be slightly better, more natural colours, I think. So yeah, not a huge amount of work done, but we're making progress. Somebody said in another channel, I think it was, there was a live show and they were talking about mojo problems and all this sort of thing. And somebody said, if you just do 10 or 15 minutes every day, if that's all you can manage, you will see the progress building over time. It helps with the mojo as well. You know you're doing it, and you know you're making some progress, even though it's as slow as I am. But you can see there's quite a lot of detail work going on here. It's all fine stuff, and I'm not using any of these cheating paint pens. I sort of moaned about that last time, didn't I? But I'm not using any of that. I'm just doing it old school paint brushes, you know. Something I'll talk about, several of you asked me again what I use, and I've got a variety. I use paintbrushes wise, this is. I've got quite a few here, and I'm trying to find the ones I really like the best. Well, one of my favourites was Broken Toad. Unfortunately, the company's gone out of business, which is a real shame. I thought they're beautiful brushes, really like theirs. They really have got nice bristles to them. So if you can find any of these still anywhere, I'd recommend you try and get your hands on them. I also use these rather nice for fine work. Zoom in on this one. The Zukimura brushes, which I think are really excellent, and they're a bit like the Tamiya fine brushes on steroids in a way. Can you see that? Why is it having focus trouble? Come on, you can do it. There we go. Zukimura Special Brush. This is number 01, sorry. So that's number 01. They're a very nice brush. They've got a real good grip to them, good control, for fine work. So I've got 3 now, so I've got 2 of them in front of me. There's another one. So that's 750, and this one is, oh no, so that's the price. 750 yen it says on the side. Oh, that's interesting. And then that one's 600 yen. How interesting. And this one is number 04, which is a bit thicker. Let's pull those ends off. Here you go. So you can see the differences. Whoops. Get me focus on the camera for you. So you can see the differences there. But they're very nice brushes. Or, of course, I've got quite a number of these, the Tamiya ones. Here they are, the extra fine Tamiya brushes. Just take the end off. Here we go. So you probably noticed that they're not that clean. Tamiya modelling brush HG. This is 87154, that particular one. And I find they're very, very good for fine work. Great control. I've got multiples. I've got about 5 of them. Some have got protective tips on and some haven't. Can we have some focus? Thank you very much. There you go. That's a very fine one indeed. And there we go. So yeah, I use those, and of course I also use my airbrush. I've got 2 airbrushes, in fact. I'm going to talk about that in a separate program rather than this is long enough now. So I'm going to call it a day here. But we're going to talk about airbrushes. Somebody said, "Oh, show us your airbrush." Somebody said that just a week, 10 days ago. Can you show us your airbrush? And you're talking about stripping it. How do you strip it and all that kind of thing? Okay, no problem. So I'm going to get my Finger Banger El Cheapo economy airbrush out and my normal airbrush, which is the Anesta Wata HPCH, I think it is the one I use, which I've used for all the models you see, everything, with the exception of the racing cars where they've got some of them's got rattle can on them. The vast majority of all the models you've seen in the cabinets painted with that Iwata airbrush. That one, these 2 were both rattle can, these reds. So if you see red, be suspicious. That's probably rattle can, red or Dayglow red. So the motorbike was rattle can, and the McLaren was rattle can, and the Brabham fan car rattle can. I think they're all the same shade of red, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the same shade? I think that's a different shade, isn't it? I think that's a darker red than that one is. But anyway, Tamiya rattle can. Now, just a final comment as well. It has come to my attention, very serious concern here. It's come to my attention from one of my friends and subscribers who alerted me yesterday at the time of, we're at the end of September at the time of filming. Apparently in Canada, and this could just be Canada could just be the start of this. In Canada, Tamiya's rattle cans, spray paints, have been banned by the government. They're going to be outlawed. Now I was quite shocked because they, it's like all these products that we use need to be treated with great care. There's a lot of nasty chemicals, especially brush cleaners that I use, especially when I use the, where is it, this one. This is absolutely evil stuff, the Tamiya Painter Clean. Very nasty stuff indeed. Absolutely stinks, not good for you. Always have good ventilation or wear a respirator. But for me personally, when I'm using rattle can, I generally don't spray in the house anyway. It's done outside, and I have to wait for a good day when there's no wind, of course. I'll generally do it in warmer, sunnier days when there's no breeze and no dust flying around. Or I will prepare, as I did with the McLaren, I'll prepare a room specially. My wife will be frowning when she hears these words, because she remembers it all too well. Prepare a room specially, i.e. the utility room where we have the washing machines and things, and mask it all off and then get sprayed in there, which didn't go down very well. We had red paint everywhere, even though I protected it with cardboard and all sorts. It was in the air. We had it on the walls and all sorts on the floor. I've got a patch of red paint on the floor of the garage as well. Oops. Anyway, I was wearing a respirator, yeah, because it was indoors. And then once the painting was done, the car was covered with a cake tin box type of thing to stop any dust falling on it while it dried. And I then put it somewhere in one of these boxes, and I then had to fumigate and ventilate the room that had been sprayed in, because it was nasty. You don't want to be breathing this stuff in, sure, but I don't see a need to ban it, and I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, will probably agree with me. Banning things because they're a little bit dangerous. It's like smoking. I'm an occasional smoker. Some of you know I have a very occasional cigar. I probably smoke about 12 a year, maybe less, 10 a year probably. Basically one a month, thereabouts. As a treat or special occasions and things. I consider myself a non-smoker. I didn't like it when smoking was allowed in restaurants and pubs, and it was banned in the UK, I don't know, 12 or 15 years ago now, in those kind of indoor places. But I worked for a company a couple of years back in Austria, and they still allowed it. You know, I don't know whether it's still allowed now, but it was allowed then. This is 2017, 2018. And I was horrified. I remember walking through this restaurant, and it's just that we get used to things, and it was like cutting your way through a fog of horror. And they were horrible cigarettes as well. They smell absolutely foul. But I didn't want it to be banned. I just wanted it to be banned in, where it is dangerous when you're in a non-ventilated environment. And now there's talk in the UK. They're talking. I'm not getting on a political thing here at all, but there's now talk they're going to ban them outdoors as well. There won't be any smoking allowed in places like beer gardens, in pubs, and outside of restaurants or on the street. I mean, that is just taking things ridiculously too far. A nanny state, and I think this is what's happening with the Tamiya sprays. So those of you watching me, depending on what part of the world you're in, and it's worth we all become aware of this and start to monitor what's going on, because it sounds as though there is a movement afoot, maybe not just Canada. I will be very surprised if it ends up just being Canada, where some of these products are going to get banned and you won't be able to get them anymore. Now, we've had problems like that with some of the Tamiya products. Sometimes getting hold of the glue can be, and some of their other products can be quite difficult. What was the other one that was banned by the EU? One of the Tamiya range, and I can't think what it was. Was it the putty? No. Can't remember, but I know a couple of their products have already been banned by the EU. So it's the nanny state again. Politicians thinking that they need to control every part of your life, which they don't need to at all. They have plenty of warnings on the bottles. You can smell like this one. It's so disgusting. You know not to go inhaling that. I did actually inhale a bit too much of it once when I was making my P51 Mustang, I think it was, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I had to go to the doctor, and and he said, well, he just tell you, it's there on the bottle, tell me off. And he was right. I'm asthmatic anyway, as you probably know, because some of you see my inhalers. So you've got to be careful with these chemicals. Some of them are quite dangerous, and you don't want to be inhaling that stuff. But that's no reason to ban it. Everything's dangerous. Driving's dangerous. Yeah, getting on a bus is dangerous. Going for a walk is dangerous. Eating's dangerous. You can get poisoned, get food poisoning quite easily. It's there's amounts of risk that can be mitigated, and what is reasonable risk. And I think that banning things, especially when we're talking about a product that works really well. I have the proof right in front of me. That's Tamiya. I can't remember the TS number, but the TS, is it Signal Red? The bright red. It's the one that for Ferrari. I've forgotten it. And that's the lighter orangey red. Orangey red, I think it's called. Those are both Tamiya rattle can, and they would not look as good had I if I'd have sprayed those with, even with a good gloss coat, I don't believe they'd look as good if they'd been sprayed with, you know, acrylics or even maybe the Tamiya lacquer paints. Now, and that's the one I'm worried about. I'm worried that that'll be the one to start banning, Tamiya lacquer paint. So watch this space and keep your eyes and ears open. You heard it here first. Oh, I heard it from my friend in Canada, obviously, but it was Steve at Steve's Vintage Model Builds. In fact, some of you may be subscribers of his, and that is alarming. It's alarming. I think that we've got to try and push back against this sort of silliness, really. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Hope you found it interesting. I'm talking about a slightly different subject today. You know, we all go on about building, and people say, when are you going to build such and such? And then you build it, and it's like, oh, now what am I going to do with it? And this is the problem, isn't it? So it's worth considering and planning before you do a build. Where are you going to display it and how are you going to display it? And you need to do it, if you can, in a way that keeps it protected, so that your art, you know, your personal work of art, it is, you know, going to be maintained and will have longevity for people to see it and enjoy it and appreciate it. And the only way to do that is to really put it in a case, I think, or a cabinet. Not like my racing cars, which are all now looking very tatty indeed and need reconditioning, so I'll have to do that. Again, it's a job that am I going to do that when I've got all these other things to do? Probably not. It's just going to sit there getting more and more dusty. Anyway, perhaps you can avoid my mistake. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thought it was interesting, thought-provoking. I mentioned about the airbrushes. I'm going to have a little talk on airbrushes. I'm not going to be, you know, this world expert or anything like that. I'm just going to tell you about my experiences. And I talked about how I like to strip an airbrush, which is why I don't. The Fender one, the Fender one, is not so suitable for my style of doing things, because I like to have the airbrush clean every time I use it. But I'll show you my airbrush and we'll have a little chat about it, and I'll talk about the pressures I use. Not to be used as a guide for anybody else, because there's probably lots of variables. But I'll just tell you how I do it. You know, if it's of interest to you and you think it might help you, then that's all good. Anyway, that's coming up soon. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining me. Take care of yourselves. Until next time, thanks a lot. Bye for now.